Hello, mathematicians, and welcome to another wonderful day of math. Mrs. Hagedorn here, and we are going to be learning about Unit 2, Lesson 7, and we are going to be practicing the show all totals method today when we are adding two-digit numbers. So we are going to be starting off again with our workbook page 105, I believe it is, and we are going to be working with number 1, which says, Mr. Green orders 25 jars of grape jelly and 48 jars of strawberry jelly. How many jars of jelly does he order? Well, when we read this question, that last part that says, how many jars of jelly does he order, gives us an idea that we are going to be looking for a total. And so we are going to take the numbers 25 and 48. Mrs. Hagedorn has already written them down for you. And the first step that we're going to do for show all totals method with our proof drawing is not only would we write it out, and we would be very, very careful to make sure that when we're lining up our numbers, that we are lining up our tens and our ones. So this would be our ones column. And this, of course, is our tens column. So we want to make sure that those are lined up carefully. We would also make our proof drawing off to the side. So the first step we're going to do today is we're going to add the tens. I see that that in number 25, I see a 20 or two tens. And in the number 48, I see a 40 or four tens. So I can add my two tens and my four tens, and I can get six tens, which is actually 60. And when I look here, I can see that two tens plus four tens would make six tens, and six tens is the same as 60. So let's go on to step 2. If you noticed, this may look a little bit different, and if moms and dads are watching, this will look very different to you because we are actually adding from left to right. All right, so we are adding from over here in the left, and we are adding to the right. So we are actually adding that tens column first. All right, so now in our show all totals, we are now going to add the ones. And so again, you may notice that we had our tens from before, where we added our two tens and our four tens and got six tens, or we had our 60. And then now we are going to be adding our ones, and we have 5 ones and 8 ones. And when we look at our 5 and our 8 ones, we can now make a drawing with those ones, and we can take the 8 ones from down here and grab 2 ones from there, and that is actually going to make us a new 10. And so in this case, we now have 3 ones plus that new 10 to equal 13. And so we would actually go ahead and write that 13 down below the 60 down here. So 5 ones plus 8 ones is 13 ones. As we continue to go on to our step 3, we now have already been kind of highlighting. We're going to highlight again that we have our tens over here and our ones over here in this column. All right, and when I add my two totals, first I add the 6 tens and the 1 10 to get 7 tens, because I have up here my 6 tens as I said before, and I now had those ones that made a new 10. Remember, 1 10, and we had still those 3 ones, so I would have 6 tens plus 1 10, that would equal 7 tens. Or I could write it as 60 plus 10 equals 70. And that 70 is then represented by the 7 in the tens column. And then on to my last step with finding the ones total. So we already, of course, have our ones and our tens that we have found. And we are now looking, and we have found that when I add the 0 ones and the 3 ones, the 0 ones and the 3 ones, that still equals 3 ones, which when I look up here, I've got my 6 tens, my new 10, and I still have my 3 ones. So 0 ones plus 3 ones equals 3 ones. Okay, so my answer is 73, or 7 tens, 3 ones. And when we look at our picture here, we can see where we had our tens from before with our new 10 and our 3 ones. So it may look a little bit different than the way that you've done it, but we're going to try the next one and try again. So this next one is from number 3 in our workbook, and it reads, Mrs. Green orders 78 pounds of white rice and 57 pounds of brown rice. How many pounds of rice does she order? Well, let's take and look to see if Mr. Green's method will work here again with show all totals, because these are larger numbers. I'm not sure, but let's give it a go. So again, Mrs. Hagedorn wrote out the number 78 and 57, and she wants to keep reminding you we're going to have our tens column and we're going to have our ones column. And I wonder if we might even make something that would go into what would be the hundreds column. Let's take a look as we go on. So when we look at this one, it says that there are 7 tens, and you can see that Mrs. Hagedorn has made her 7 tens, her 5 tens and 2 more tens. And then down here, we're adding 5 more tens. So that is the same as 7 tens and 5 tens would be the same as 12 tens. Or we could also say that 70 and 50 are equal to 120. When we see our 7 tens, oh, excuse me, I did not want that to make a straight line. When we see our 7 tens, we would need 3 more tens to make that 100, and that 100, and then as you may notice, there's still 10, 20. So we would write that as 120, or 102 tens. All right, and as we move on to the next part here, we can see that we brought forward from what we were working with again. We will go ahead and we will highlight the hundreds place. We will highlight the tens place, and we will highlight the ones place, because that is going to all still continue to be very important for us. So as we look at this here, we had our 100, which is represented over here in our 2 tens. But now we are going to add the ones. And when we look over here at our ones, we have 8 ones and 7 ones. So we are going to take our 8 ones, and how many more do we need to make a 10? That's right, 2. So now we have made another 10. And so our total number of ones that we have is our 10, and then the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that are here. So we actually have 15 ones, which would also match the 8 and the 7 for the 15 ones. let's go on to the next part, which again, we're just going to quickly highlight now. Ones, tens, and our hundreds. So we can see that in this one, it says to find the hundreds total. And when we find the hundreds total, we notice that we have this 100 up here. And with that 100 up here and the 100 over here, we need to make sure that we bring it down into our equation, that we still have our 100 there. So 100 and 0 hundreds is 100. Moving on to our next step. Again, we just did the hundreds. We're going to go ahead and do the tens, and then we're going to go ahead and do, we're going to go ahead and do those ones as well. And in this column now, we're going to be finding our tens. And as we find our tens, we may notice that we had 2 tens and 1 10. 1, 2 tens and a new 10, which then made 3 tens, if you notice. So we actually have our 100 and our 10, 20, and 30. And so now we're going to go on to this last and final step. And just so that we keep keeping consistent, we have our 100s, we have our 10s, and we have our 100s. I think I misspoke. Let me say that again. In the orange here, we have our 1s, in the yellow is our 10s, and in the green is our 100s. So we can see that we have 100 right here, okay? We already found that we had the 2 10s and another 10 to make the 3 10s, and then we still have these 5 1s over here. So we had a 0, and a 5 to make 5 1s. So we had 100 plus 30 plus 5 to equal 135. Oh no, look who's come to see us again, that silly puzzled penguin. He's wondering if he's made an error. It looks like he went ahead and he started to add like we asked him to. It looks like he added 78 and 57. And then it looks like he said he had 120 and 15. He's wondering, did he make a mistake? Yes, you are right. He did make a mistake. He made a kind of a silly mistake that Mrs. Hagedorn kept representing over and over again. He's going to have his 78, and then he's going to have his 57, and he's going to add those. And remember, we're then looking at the 70 and the 50 to make 120. And then we're looking at the 8 and the 7 to make 15. And then when we add those all up together, we get 103 10s and 5 1s. Puzzled Penguin accidentally put the 15 under the 10s in the 120. That doesn't make any sense. Good thing we were here to give him a way to solve it together. All right, the last one that we have here is just another way of looking at show all totals that Mrs. Hagedorn thought might be helpful for some of you to kind of think about as well. So when I think about the number 25, I see the numbers 20 and 5. In the number 48, I see the numbers 40 and 8. And when I add those 10s first, 20 and 40, that's going to give me 60 plus my 5 and my 8 would be, that's right, 13. I think of those 8 ones and those 5 ones, and I'm going to make that 10. So I'm going to take my larger number of 8, take the 2 more, make a 10, and then I have 10 and 3 1s, so 13. So that is going to equal, and now that I said we've made a new 10, now I'm going to add that new 10 to my 60, so it would be 73. Another way to think about it is to, again, look at the 78 and break that number apart into 70, all right, and 8. And then look at the 57 and break that apart into 50 and 7. And go ahead and add those as well. And my 70 and my 50, like we did before, would actually be 7 tens and 5 tens, which would be 12 tens, which is also the same as 120. And then I would add to that my 8 ones and my 7 ones and get 13. Oh no, Mrs. Hagedorn, you are wrong. How about we add 8 and 7 and get 15? And we would add our 120 to our 15. So we would have our 100, 20, and 10, or 2 tens and 1 10 would be 3 tens for 30. And 0 and 5 ones would be 5 ones. I hope this helps with show all totals. Remember, this is new for some of you, so really it's okay. Take your time and give it your best effort.